parents demanded my cars to buy a sister a house. Hired investigators meant to track down my assets. What unfolded next shattered their perfect life. I never expected to be writing one of these pieces, but here I am at 2 a.m., sitting in my garage surrounded by my cars, trying to digest what happened during Sunday dinner. My name is Noah, and I'm 28 years old. Let me start with some context. I've been fascinated by vehicles since I was 5 years old, when my grandfather took me to a classic car show. While other children collected baseball cards, I collected diecast models and saved every dime for automobile magazines. At 14, I began working, mowing lawns, delivering papers, and doing anything lawful. And every dime went into a savings account called Dream Cars. My parents, Robert, 55, male, and Linda, 53, female, thought it was cute when I was a kid. They'd laugh when I skipped birthday celebrations to work more hours or ate ramen for months to save money. Noah and his cars, they'd say, shaking their heads with amusement. My younger sister, Emma, 20, female, would roll her eyes anytime I mentioned torque ratios during meals. This is what they didn't know: I was doing more than just saving. I was also learning. I taught myself how to rebuild cars by watching YouTube videos and reading forums. At the age of 16, I purchased my first project car, a rusted-out 1970 Plymouth Barracuda, for $800. Everyone laughed. "That's not a car, it's scrap metal," Dad said. But I spent 2 years renovating it before selling it for $15,000. That's when I knew I possessed a gift, not only for rehabilitation, but also for recognizing promise where others saw garbage. I continued buying, restoring, and selling, reinvesting everything. By the time I finished college with an engineering degree, I had a side business that paid more than my beginning wage. Now, at the age of 28, I possessed 12 cars, not ordinary automobiles. We're talking about a 1969 Dodge Charger R/T, a 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda, a 1963 split-window Corvette, and several more vehicles. The collection is worth around $1.8 million, but I've never had it professionally assessed since I don't want that information to go public. These are not just investments for me. Each one symbolizes hundreds of hours of my effort, my blood, sweat, and actual tears when things went wrong. I live modestly in a little house with a spacious garage. I drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic every day. I don't wear costly clothes or go on lavish vacations. My delight stems from spending Saturdays beneath a hood, enjoying the gratification of restoring something lovely to life. Which leads us to Sunday dinner. Mom began it lightly, as she always does when she wants anything major. "You know, Noah, Emma has been looking at apartments, but the rental market is just insane right now." I agreed, taking another chunk of pot roast. Emma had already mentioned this to me. She graduated from community college with an associate's degree in marketing 6 months ago, but has yet to find work. She'd been living at home, which was okay. I did the exact same thing after college. "She really needs her own place," Mom added. "A young woman needs independence." "The market should cool down eventually," I added, attempting to maintain neutrality. That's when Dad put down his fork. "Actually, we've been pondering. You have all of those cars sitting in storage. If you sold even half of them, you could buy Emma a wonderful home. She'd be fine." The words hung in the air like exhaust fumes. I looked at Emma, who had suddenly become very interested in her mashed potatoes. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed. "It makes sense," Mom said, her voice taking on the tone she employed when she'd made up her mind. "You have more than you need. Family helps family. When you first started out, we let you use the garage for free. I paid you rent for the garage space," I answered slowly, $800 per month, remember?" Dad responded, "That was nothing compared to how much commercial space would have cost. And at the age of 22, I moved out. I've been on my own for 6 years, but Emma requires assistance now," Mom argued. "You can always buy another automobile later, Noah. These are simply things. Emma is your sister." I glanced at her again. She eventually caught my gaze, and I saw it there: expectation. She expected me to do it. They all did. "Those cars aren't just things," I explained carefully. "They're my business, my retirement." "Your obsession," Dad said. "You're 28 years old and spend every weekend alone in the garage. When will you grow up and care about someone other than yourself?" The accusation landed like a punch. Selfish. I'd been working since I was 14. I'd never asked them for a dime since high school. I paid my own way through college by working evenings to fix cars to cover tuition. "I need to think about this," I explained. "What's to think about?" Mom's voice became sharper. "Emma needs a home. You have the ability to deliver it. End of story." "It's not that simple." "It is," Dad replied. "We know how much those cars are worth, Noah. We've seen the auction sites. You could buy Emma a house and still have a lot left over. That's when I realized it, they had been doing research. They had been planning for this. Do you know how much my autos are worth? I asked. Mom had the grace to appear slightly ashamed. Emma helped us check up some of the models online. Noah, you have nearly $2 million in assets, but your sister can't even afford rent. Emma, I turned to face my sister, is this true? Have you been researching my collection? She shrugged. I was fascinated, so Mom asked me to help. It's not normal, Noah, to have all that money sitting there. I'm always working on their autos. I have buyers interested in several of them, but I'm waiting for the appropriate offer. This is how I make a living. You have your engineering work, Dad reminded, which earns $75,000 per year. The cars are how I actually develop wealth. Wealth you're hoarding, Mom snapped. While your family suffers, Emma lives at home rent-free. I pointed out, that's not really a struggle. She needs her own space, a fresh start in life that she can create for herself, just like I did. The table exploded. Dad labeled me selfish and immature. Mom scolded me for prioritizing machines before family. Emma wailed that I didn't love her and that I preferred vehicles over my own sister. I left. I drove home in my Civic, my hands trembling behind the wheel. When I arrived at my garage, I stood there staring at my automobiles, seeing not just metal and chrome, but thousands of hours of work, learning, and pride. That's when I made a decision. Update 1, 2 weeks later, I knew they were going to intensify. I didn't expect them to move that quickly. The morning after dinner, I began making calls. I discovered a climate-controlled storage facility 2 towns away, complete with high-security measures. It was pricey, but I wanted a location that they couldn't discover. I rented 5 flats under an LLC name and began the logistics of relocating 12 cars without anyone's knowledge. I took a week off work, citing a family emergency. Ironic, right? Every night, beginning at 2 a.m., I would trailer 1 or 2 cars to the new facility. I engaged a security company to transfer the most valuable items. By Friday, my garage was empty, except for tools and my Civic. Saturday morning, as I was installing new locks, I heard automobiles in my driveway, not just 1, but 3. My parents, Emma, and my Uncle James, a real estate agent. My Aunt Susan and Cousin Olivia were also there. They held a key. I had forgotten that I had given Mom a spare key years ago for emergencies. They let themselves in before I could reach the door. Noah, Mom shouted out, we've come to talk sense into you. James found the perfect house for Emma, and we need to. She came to a halt when she noticed the vacant garage through the kitchen doorway. The expression on her face would have been amusing if it hadn't been so terrifying. She moved from confused to understanding to enraged in approximately 3 seconds. Where are they? She demanded. Where are what? I inquired, feigning dumb. Don't dare. Where are your cars, Noah? I sold them, I lied, each of them, in 1 week. Don't insult my intelligence. Dad pushed past her into the garage, as if the automobiles were hidden somewhere. Uncle James followed, literally looking behind tool cabinets. You moved them, Emma said quietly. She had remained silent until now, but her voice was icy. You actually hid them from us. They're my cars, I said. I can store them wherever I want. We're your family, Mom yelled, actually screamed. I had never heard her voice reach that pitch. How could you do it? How can you be so cruel? Cruel? I laughed, but it wasn't funny. You ambushed me at dinner and demanded that I sell my life's work, and I'm cruel? We asked you to help your sister, Dad added, his voice dangerously low, and instead, you've shown us exactly what kind of man you are. The kind who won't be bullied into giving away what he's earned. That's when Uncle James stepped in. Noah, let's be reasonable. I found Emma a nice 3-bedroom house for $350,000. That's about 2 of your autos, you'd barely notice. He moved them so we couldn't find them, Emma said. He doesn't mind if I end up on the street. You live with Mom and Dad, I explained, rent-free, you hold a degree. You can get a job in this economy. Aunt Susan chimed in, have some compassion. I worked 3 jobs during the recession to buy my first car. I told her. Emma hasn't even started looking for work. That was apparently the incorrect thing to say. Emma burst into tears, the kind of theatrical cries she mastered in high school. Mom hurried to comfort her while Dad yelled at me. You're going to tell us where those cars are, he said. And you're going to do the right thing, or what? Or you're not my son anymore. The words should have hurt. A month ago, they would have completely destroyed me. But standing there, watching my entire family try to shame and intimidate me into obedience, I felt liberated. Okay, I said. Okay, will you tell us now? Okay, I'm not your son anymore. Please leave my house. This time, the explosion was more severe. Mom called me heartless. Dad thought I was sick, that my obsession with vehicles had turned me into something unnatural. Emma yelled that I had ruined her life. Uncle James attempted to mediate, suggesting family counseling. Aunt Susan videotaped everything on her phone, promising to show everyone who I was. I phoned the cops, I had to. They refused to go, and Dad became hostile, forcing his way to my office, where he suspected I could have storage unit paperwork. Officers Johnson and Martinez showed up. They were professional and cool. And when I stated that I had requested everyone to leave my property, but they refused, they made it obvious that my family would have to leave. "This isn't over," Dad stated as Officer Johnson let him out. "We know you keep those autos somewhere. Family doesn't do this to one another." Mom sobbed as she departed. Emma didn't say anything, she just looked at me with such disdain that I took a step back. Officer Martinez waited after the others had left. "Family disputes are rough," he remarked. "You might want to consider getting security cameras and changing all your locks." That afternoon, I deployed the cameras. I changed all of the locks, including the deadbolts. I installed a security system, opened a new bank account at a different bank, and transferred all of my money. I changed all my passwords. I made certain that my LLC documentation was absolutely correct. Then I sat in my empty garage, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Update 2, the harassment began immediately. First, there were the calls, 20 to 30 times every day. When I blocked their numbers, they switched to other phones, acquaintances, coworkers, and extended relatives. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion on my selfishness. The texts were terrible. Emma sent me photos of homeless people with remarks like, "This will be me, thanks to you." Mom shared Bible scriptures about honoring your father and mother. Dad sent just variants of, "I'm disappointed in you." Then began the social media effort. Emma shared a heartbreaking story on Facebook about how her brother prioritized vehicles before family. She didn't mention my name, but everyone knew. The post became viral in our community. My neighbors avoided eye contact. Coworkers inquired about my well-being, and old high school pals reached out to tell me I was a monster. My cousin Olivia, who had been recording at my house, shared the video, which had been modified. It showed me phoning the police on my elderly folks. They're in their 50s. My needy sister was wearing fancy jeans. The comments were harsh, but the worst part was the investigation. 2 weeks after I kicked them out, a stranger came up at my doorstep. My parents hired a private detective to help them find my cars. He was actually pleasant about it. He stated that he had seen this type of situation many times, families battling over assets. "I'm just going to tell them I couldn't find anything," he replied after I explained the scenario. "However, they will recruit someone else. People go crazy over money." He was correct. They hired 2 additional investigators. They called every storage facility within a 100-mile radius. They had Emma build a phony dating profile in order to match me and gather information. They phoned my insurance company, pretending to be me, and attempted to obtain the addresses where my automobiles were registered. That's when I realized I needed to go darker. I spoke with Michelle Lee, a lawyer who specializes in family law and asset protection. She was bright and ruthless. "Your parents have no legal claim to your assets," she told me. "But they're pestering you. We can file a restraining order against your parents. They're trying to take from you, Noah. They're hiring investigators, impersonating you, and stalking you. This is not typical family behavior." She was correct. I applied for restraining orders against both my parents and Emma. The hearing was terrible. They arrived with their own lawyer, paid for by emptying my father's 401k. I discovered this later. They tried to claim that I had stolen family property and that the automobiles were partially theirs because I had utilized their garage 6 years prior. The judge was not buying it. She approved the restraining orders. My family couldn't get within 500 feet of me, my home, or my workplace. They could not reach me directly or through third parties. As we left the courthouse, Emma immediately disobeyed the order by racing up to shout at me, "I wish you'd die alone in your idiotic automobiles." The bailiff arrested her on the spot. She spent the night in jail and completed community service. That's when things became quiet, too quiet. I concentrated on my work, including both my day job and my automobiles. I would drive to the storage facility at random times, never establishing a pattern. I'd spend hours working on my 1971 Plymouth, lost in the comfortable rhythm of restoration, but I also felt lonely. The family I had lost was not ideal, but they had been mine. Thanksgiving came and went. I ate a turkey sandwich in the garage. As Christmas approached, I wondered what they were doing. Then last week, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't respond, but something made me pick up. Ava, Emma's friend, was there. "Don't hang up," she replied immediately. "Emma doesn't know I'm calling." "What do you want?" "To tell you that you're correct. Emma hasn't been seeking a job. She's been waiting for you to cave. Your parents have been enabling her for years, and the house was their idea, not hers." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she's been bragging about it, about how she'll eventually break you down, How familial pressure will cause you to crack. She's been giggling about it with her partner. Does Emma have a boyfriend? For 2 years, Tyler, he works in technology and earns big money. They intend to move in together, but Emma requested a free house first. She reasoned, why pay for something she could guilt you into providing? I hung up. I wasn't sure if Ava was telling the truth or if this was just another deception ploy, but it didn't matter. I had made my choice. Update 3, 3 months later, everything changed due to a newspaper article. The local paper ran a profile on young entrepreneurs, and they somehow learned about my restoration firm. Emily Davis, a reporter, had been following my work for years without my knowledge. She hunted out customers who had purchased cars from me, chronicled their makeovers, and even found before and after images. The piece was headlined, "The Mechanic Millionaire, How Noah Thompson, 28, Built an Empire, One Classic Car at a Time." It described everything. I started at the age of 14, thousands of hours of learning, careful investments, the restorations are magnificent. There were interviews with delighted customers, images of my greatest work, and even a sidebar about how old automobiles are becoming more valuable as investments. The article went live on Tuesday. By Wednesday, my phone was ringing nonstop, but not from family trouble. Collectors wanted to recruit me. Museums wanted to display my automobiles. A streaming service wished to discuss a restoration show, but the finest call came on Thursday morning. "Noah, it's Emma." I nearly hung up. She was breaching the restraining order by calling. "Wait, please. I'm at a police station. I'm turning myself in after this conversation, but I needed to speak with you first. You have 30 seconds. I have a job, actually. I've been working for a marketing agency downtown for the past 2 weeks. The pay is not high, but it's a start, and I've been approved for a tiny apartment. Nothing spectacular, but it's mine. Why are you telling me this? I was unaware until I read that piece, Noah. None of us realized how hard you worked. Mom and Dad always made it sound like you were just lucky, as if the automobiles fell into your lap. But seeing everything set out like that, 14 years of non-stop work. I didn't say anything. I've been horrible, she said, her voice breaking. I let Mom and Dad convince me that I was entitled to what you had created. I was quite jealous. You had all the success, but I was still living at home, but I've never worked for it, not as you did, Noah. I'm going to treatment, and I'm going to make something of myself without anyone's assistance. I wanted you to know that. She hung up. An hour later, I received a call from the police verifying that she had turned herself in for breaking the restraining order. I didn't press charges. The story also had an unexpected impact on my parents. Their pals read it. Their coworkers read it. Everyone read it. Suddenly, the story shifted. They were not the struggling parents with a selfish son. They were the greedy parents that attempted to steal their successful son's hard-earned assets. Dad's supervisor brought him in to address the unsettling report about him attempting to compel his son to liquidate a legal firm. Mom's book group declined to invite her. The country club suspended their membership pending a review. Uncle James contacted me last week, not to harass, but to apologize. I didn't understand, he said. Your folks made it sound like you suddenly stumbled upon money. I thought you were adamant about sharing a fortune, but Noah, you created something great. I'm sorry I got entangled. As for me, I'm doing better than I anticipated. My business has benefited from the publicity generated by the piece. I boosted my restoration prices, and people are willing to pay them. I'm booked solid for the next 18 months. I've also started dating. Chloe is a mechanical engineer who, like myself, is passionate about cars. We met at an antique automobile exhibition. She was presenting a 1967 Camaro that she had refurbished herself. I'm keeping the family issues a secret from her for the time being. Last Sunday, I headed to the storage facility to perform my weekly maintenance routine. All 12 automobiles were present, glistening under the lights. I spent 3 years perfecting the 1969 Charger R/T. I saved the split-window Corvette from a scrapyard. The Hemi Cuda had taken 6 months just to get the right parts. I ran my palm along the Charger's hood, thinking what my father had said, these were only stuff. He was wrong. They demonstrated that a 14-year-old boy with a dream may achieve incredible results through persistence and hard effort. My phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. I almost deleted it before realizing it was a photo. Emma was standing in front of a little apartment building with a key. The message stated, I paid the first month's rent with my first salary. It's not much, but it's mine. Thank you for teaching me that earning things for yourself is the only way that matters. I deleted the message. The restraining order was still in effect, and I wasn't prepared to rebuild that bridge, maybe someday, but not today. But I smiled because she finally grasped what I had always known: nobody can steal what they cannot locate, and no one can take what you've genuinely earned. The autos were safe. The business was booming. And for the first time in months, I felt able to breathe. My family had been right about one thing: I was infatuated with my vehicles. However, they were mistaken about the reason. It wasn't about money or metal. It was about demonstrating that someone who begins with nothing but dedication can create something that no one can take away. My phone rang as I was locking up the storage facility and heading home. Chloe asked if I wanted to go out to dinner and talk about the '68 Mustang Fastback she discovered online. Absolutely, I replied, already envisioning the restoration possibilities. Let me tell you what I think we could do with it. Life was good, different from what I had planned, lonelier in some ways, but genuine. I'd learned that family doesn't always consist of folks who share your blood. Sometimes it's the folks who share your ideals and recognize that what you produce with your own hands is sacred. The collection was secure, the business was mine, and the future was as open as a clear length of highway with no speed limits. I'd drive alone rather than with passengers who might steal the keys, because in the end, the cars weren't the most valuable thing I had protected. It was my right to choose what to do with what I had acquired. And there's something no inquiry, guilt trip, or family pressure could ever uncover in a storage container. It was mine and mine alone, as it should be. Final thoughts. Looking back, I wonder whether I could have handled things differently, perhaps with more diplomacy and understanding. But then I recall the expressions on their faces as they demanded my autos, not asking, not requesting, but demanding, as if they were entitled to years of my labor. I remember Emma looking into my collection behind my back. My parents employing private investigators. The restraining orders that became necessary simply to live peacefully. No, I dealt with it the only way I could, because if I had exhibited weakness, they would have picked me clean like vultures on roadkill. The autos are still being stored. I pay them visits on a regular basis, and Chloe occasionally joins me. She understands the sense of accomplishment that comes with repair and preservation. We're currently working on a project together, a '68 Mustang that needs everything redone, but still has good bones. Emma is still working at the marketing agency. I know because my lawyer, Michelle, monitors the restraining order to ensure it's being followed. She seemed to be doing well, having received a promotion last month. Good for her. My parents retired early. Dad's supervisor made it plain that the exposure was not beneficial to the company. They sold their home and relocated to Florida. They sent one final note through their lawyer, stating that they had written me out of their will. I laughed. They had already spent my alleged fortune attempting to take my true assets. Sometimes, late at night in the garage, I reflect on that Sunday meal that started it all. How different would life be if I had simply said yes? What if I had sold a few automobiles, bought Emma a house, and kept the peace? I'd be poorer, undoubtedly, but not only financially. I would have given up my integrity, liberty, and the right to the fruits of my own effort. I'd have established a precedent that my effort, enthusiasm, and accomplishments were common property that could be given at the family's discretion. And Emma, she'd still be waiting for the next handout rather than creating her own life. No, I made the correct choice, the only option, really. The collection they'll never find includes more than simply cars. It's about self-respect, limits, and the inherent freedom to refuse, even in the family, especially for family. Because a truly loving family won't try to steal what you've built, they celebrate and revere it, and if they're truly special, they might even want to ride in it. Chloe asked me last week if I miss them. I told her the truth. I miss who I thought they were, not who they actually are. She squeezed my hand and said, "Well, you've got a new family now, the kind you choose." She referred to the car community. Our group of restoration enthusiasts meets every Saturday to work on projects and share information. People who recognize the importance of hard effort, respect ownership, and would never expect to be held accountable for the accomplishments of others. But I believe she also meant us, her and me, developing something together, one restored car at a time. This is worth more than any collection. Don't worry, I'm still not selling the automobiles. They're concealed, safe, and mine.